me to make us proud.
He always does.
I try. Never mind being unemployed or having a low-paying job. A new survey finds 1 in 7 households actually has negative wealth, which is when someone's debt exceeds their assets. This even applies for people who have good-paying jobs. The reasons for this include credit debt, credit card debt, big mortgages, and student loan debt. All right, money. Call you. Why?
Yeah.
So this actually explains the disconnect between when you give us those raw numbers about unemployment and it looks like the economy is cooking along this way, but everybody feels something different. This is that spelled out, I would imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, mortgage debt is something that people are used to. Our parents have had that. We know how that goes. The credit card debt is very overwhelming, and that has to do with how wages have lagged behind everything else in this recovery. And that's been, really a tough thing. People's wages have not risen because there have been so many people unemployed in your job. You could always be replaced. The wages have not gone up. Also, student debt is just a huge problem right now for so many people.
Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, and we're not making decisions about what to study and how much debt to take on in the right way. Looking at what's my job going to be later, and am I going to be able to pay this back? Is it worth it? It's a lesson, that people aren't taking. They're going out there and studying philosophy and spending a fortune on it and not taking into account. I will never be able. A professional philosopher doesn't pay that well.
I studied philosophy.
Sandra, you and I have talked
you
about. And I remember the days of the career counselor. They'd say, figure out what you want to be and whether or not there are jobs in that field, and you can still do your dream, but you might have to work double hard doing both.
And figure out what college you can afford too is a big part of it. Look, I'm not against people going where they want to go and spending what they have to spend to do that, but be prepared for what that means for your life and for your financial goals going forward. When you look at this group that has negative wealth, the middle group, which means they have debt over assets ranging between $12,000 and nearly $50,000. It was, Melissa, to your point, mostly student loan debt. And people are paying back that student loan debt slower and slower because they think, you know what, I'll make the money later on. And it's tough to catch up. And it's a cyclical thing.
So I have to ask then, I want to press in, with Bernie Sanders and his offering to, wipe away everybody's debt and give all
Sounded
the
lovely.
to the young kids and all that.
Free college for all.
Yeah, so why did that get such pushback, do you think, among Republicans, among fiscal conservatives? What do we really need to do to help people with that debt?
Well, first of all, what
Or is it
happens to our
responsibility?
education, our college education in this country when you're promising it for free? That's the bottom line, right? And then you say you're going to forgive all that student loan, we're going to take care of all that for you. Who's paying for it? That's what Republicans want to ask. Who's going to pay for that? Who's going to be on the hook for it?
And more importantly, I would add real quick, the Federal Reserve did a study proving that for every dollar of aid you give away, the price of college goes up by 65 cents. So the inflation of the price just goes up to keep up with how much aid there is out there.
It's the
So
same.
I want to come back to the politics of this, though, because where does that leave us, the taxpayers? Are we in fact responsible for helping lift up the economy in that sense with the student debt? How do we get rid of it?
Well, you also heard from Melissa's perspective, it doesn't even actually help student debt, or at least it doesn't bring down the cost
So
of
what do we
private
do?
education. You look at the same thing as you've seen with Obamacare real quickly, where you socialize something, you think it's going to bring down costs, but we're now seeing every day that costs impact among insurers are even going higher. Some insurers are going out of the little marketplaces they have created, and the same thing would happen
Healthcare
in private education. I think you bring up a good point, Sandra, and I think culturally and generationally, we've gone to this place where we spend based on our future earnings. We spend based on what we think we're going to get and going to have.
That's it's good to dream, but be realistic.
But politically, just real quick, I do want to say, because it was the right question, Harris, is when you think about 8 years of Barack Obama, and he came in on this whole message of hope and change, and you see statistics like this, and you hear about wages being low and costs going up, and you hear about people saying our kids are not going to have as bright a life and future as we did, the only thing that's changed is people are giving up hope. And that is the problem when you don't have a growing economy that allows the private sector to create that kind of dynamic wealth that does spread around.
Julie in here because President Obama ran on hope.
He did, and listen, I remember 25 years ago, I moved into my freshman year dorm, and there were credit card companies literally lining up to give away credit cards to 18-year-olds who had zero ability to pay those credit cards back. And people were getting them like crap.
Yeah, but they were for like $500 limit.
It doesn't matter. I know people who literally ran up because they got 4 or 5 of them, even if it's a $500 limit. They ran up these insane debts, and then ended up completely bankrupting themselves by the end of
So
freshman
this
year
is
in college.
as we conclude
Awful.
this segment. This is fact. Student loan debt in this country right now is above $1.4 trillion
Amazing.
dollars, and we wonder why the consumer is still struggling. All right, as the 2016 race rolls on, a growing number of people say their support of one of the candidates is causing them to lose friends, often over arguments on social media sites like Facebook. The site says there have been billions of posts and comments on the election, and many say they have been defriended. Isn't it unfriended, defriended, whatever, or done some defriending themselves? Now a professor is giving some tips to keep the peace, like try to use civilized tones, for example, and decorum in your political posts. Take a breath and think it through before commenting on a post or unfriending someone.
No, there's none.
Pose questions instead of making sharp opinion statements. And remember, this will all be over in November, and your friendships could and should outlast the next presidential term. But many friendships on thin ice now, with still over 2 months to go until Election Day. Let me just tell you something. And if you say that you haven't had this conversation with a friend or a loved one, you're lying, because I have heard this from many people this election cycle who say that they just don't even follow this person anymore. They can't even look at their social media posts because they can't believe how outspoken they are
I know some
with their
marriages
opinions
that are in trouble over this.
no,
Yeah, no, I'm serious.
Yeah, me
It's
too.
very sad. It's very
It's an
sad.
unbelievable phenomenon.
Yeah, you know why? Because the narrative out there is that this is the most election in our lifetimes, the most important election in our lifetimes, is really driving people to rethink their entire existence. And maybe they should. I don't know. Maybe man married wrong woman. Who knows?
It's more than